Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin Show for your Wednesday afternoon edition, the hump day, the day that I've been waiting for with regards to tariffs and what Trump was going to do. That did not disappoint. We saw some pretty interesting action, which I will discuss today. But before I dive into that, I want to let you guys know about a couple updates to my schedule for Vegas. They moved my presentation up a half hour earlier. Not that anybody here is going, but if anybody decides to go to Vegas, I will show you a few other engagements that I will now be a part of. This is for Tuesday. That will be the 15th of July. I am going to be presenting a topic called Filtering Chaos, How to Choose the Right Cryptocurrency and Digital Asset Investments. That's a 2-hour presentation. And here's the other stuff I'm doing. So Monday, I'll be on a panel talking about blockchain technology and ways to profit with digital assets. That's going to be from 4 to 4:30. On Monday the 14th, also from 4:30 to 5, key drivers and top profit strategies for the next wave of AI revolution. Then my Tuesday presentation. And finally, on Wednesday, 6:05 p.m., I will be on a panel called Crypto Coins and Currencies, How to Profit and Hedge in 25 and 26. So, gratuitous self-promotion for those of you that will be in Vegas. You can email me, let me know. I will most likely just be wandering around. So if you want to talk markets, have a drink, or have dinner, or whatever, should be fine, unless they pull me into other events. So, let's bring in today's topic. Pretty excited about this one. I was mentioning last week that given the break of that bullish flag formation, given a lot of the positive news going on, I thought that by the end of this week we would hit all-time highs. Well, here we are Wednesday. Yay, we achieved our goal. All-time highs were hit today on Bitcoin. So I got a nice little graphic here. It says Bitcoin back to all-time highs. Now, that said, I actually had my Twitter, I was downstairs trading, and I had my Twitter account open, and I created a graphic, a nice little animation that was all excited about how Bitcoin was at all-time highs. And right as it tiptoed across 12,000, at like 12,030, 12,040, I'm like, I'm going to send this out. And I said, I'm going to hold on a second. And if you look at the chart here of the spot price of Bitcoin, I'll bring this up into a 1-minute time frame. You can see that, yes, it did in fact break all-time highs today. But how long was it above 12,000? It was only above 12,000 for less than 20 seconds, right? Just 20 or 30 seconds. Then it came ripping right back down, and we have not seen that all-time high since. So this is normal. It's kind of that everyone expecting it, almost like a Ouija board. I don't know if anybody here knows what the Ouija board is. I've ever played with one. I remember in college, these guys pulled pranks on me with the Ouija board all the time. But basically, you all put your fingers lightly on this little device, and you can just manipulate it yourself. When I was on CNBC back in 2008, January of 2008, which is the video that's actually on YouTube. You guys can search Merlin Rothfeld YouTube or CNBC on YouTube. They asked me in that interview, do you think that gold, I forget the price, but do you think gold's going to go to 1,000? It was Amanda Drury, I'll never forget. She says, do you think gold's going to go to 1,000? I said, it's not a question of if, it's just when. I go, all of you are talking about how Bitcoin's going to go to 1,000, or sorry, gold's going to go to 1,000. Therefore, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for weeks, I'm hearing all these people say Bitcoin's going to break to all-time highs, and if I felt like that was just pushing this up. And if you look at the move this afternoon, right, going back into this morning, right around 11:45. This is what time frame am I in right here? I never know. 11:45 Pacific time. Bitcoin wasn't doing anything, and then it started this move, and then really accelerated and started to spike up, and then we ripped at 12,000 and came right back down. So no surprise that we made it to all-time highs. Now the big question is, does it hold and where do we go from here? From a technical perspective, this is a fairly positive sign that we see on your chart right now. Even though we just tiptoed across that 12,000 mark and came screaming back down, it's still holding. Now, for it to continue on up, which almost feels like you could argue that this is starting to look like an ascending triangle, it will probably have a pullback down over the next couple days before having the really big liftoff moment. And remember, we talked about this as a bull flag formation, which I deleted all my lines here for the bullish flag formation. This is the daily time frame. But that targeted 145,000 by August. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And Big Eb says here, I'm thinking 120 this month, if not higher. I agree. I think that once we get above and close above these all-time highs, we'll be fine. Now, some people are asking, what was causing it? What caused that spike? I see by Steve Wolf here. Several different things. I think there were comments that were made today about Bitcoin and digital assets that kind of got people a little more fired up. But I showed you a graphic last week, I believe, maybe early last week. I lose track of time. And that graphic was showing on DeFi exchanges like Aave, Compound, and et cetera, there are leveraged short positions. And that could also be going to centralized exchanges like KuCoin and Binance. Because it's on a blockchain, we can see the liquidation price for those various exchanges. And there's $6 billion worth of leveraged shorts just above where we are right now. And I think part of why we saw here was liquidations of shorts. I read somewhere this afternoon that over $600 million worth of short positions were liquidated. That's certainly that pop. Now, in my opinion, if you got $6 billion out there and only 10% of that was liquidated today, if we get another big pop over the next few days, which I do believe that people will try to push it to those levels to force those stops out, then Big Eb's target of 120 could be a very real possibility. And when you have that much short looming overhead and price rips through it, remember, this is not the discretion of a broker. The broker doesn't mull it over and say, hey, do we close this position out? Do we do that? It's automatic. If those prices are hit, they're instant liquidation on the part of those exchanges. So it's easy to force trigger those stop losses on those shorts. If that happens, again, I think that 120 would be I don't think that really be much of a challenge at all for Bitcoin to get to 120, certainly this month, if not sooner. So really positive news. I think more people are expecting a bigger follow through here, but like I say, I refrained from hitting the button that said all-time highs official. I still have it downstairs ready to go, but I've kind of thought we'd break through it and then come right back down, and lo and behold, we did. But overall, it is a great thing. Hey, Chris, good to see you. It is a very good thing to see it hold, to see it push up, and the fact that we've been making these nice kind of higher lows for the past month and breaking that channel that we had mapped out earlier, this is a very positive sign. So, I've been a little bit, not confused is not the right word, but maybe frustrated that in the grand scheme of analysis, when I looked at that 4-year cycle, which is a video I did for barchart.com, you can check out their YouTube page. It's on their YouTube. Just type in, on their videos, type in Bitcoin or my name, and you'll see the videos I've done for them. I had already expected, at this present moment, I anticipated that Bitcoin, we'd already be at 130, 140, well on our way to 250. Now, I'm still holding on to that 250. I may be wrong. I could very well be wrong, but I'm still optimistic that once we get those liquidated shorts out of the way, we get more positive action from Congress and the House of Representatives and the Senate and all our legislature with regards to this Clarity Act, which should be voted through by September is what they're saying. If that happens, that'll be another big surge up in the market. So all in all, great day to be involved with crypto. I know many of you were pretty excited about that. Steve says short squeeze coming. Yeah, and I think that today's action was a slight indication of that short squeeze. But the big short squeeze stuff is still to happen. Now, if you're those people who are leveraged short right now with massive positions long, you either one of two choices. You can either close out your short position right now in anticipation of that bull market rally ripping you apart, or you can hope and you can hold those shorts expecting it to drop. Either way, at some point, if price does continue to whether spike up or slowly drift up, you are going to see those short traders buy to cover, meaning buying pressure to push up. So all in all, this looks absolutely fantastic for anybody who's long. We made a list of Bitcoin estimates. Yes, we did, Big Heb. I'll bring up the list here. Just why not? Since you brought it up, I may as well go and check that stuff out. It was kind of all across the board, the forecast for what Bitcoin price would be. Here you have the list. At current price, we are at 111. At current price, I guess Kay Sweeney, it would be the winner at this. Yep, you'd be the winner. You're $3,000 or $3,000 off. But yeah, there's your hypothesis. Colin Tedder, so I should probably try to get back on the program. He's got 127. Where's my forecast? I don't remember where mine was. Big Eb, you got 155. Okay, you're way up there. Bill Addis was 160. I like that. I had a much more lofty price, I believe. Was I way up at the top? There's mine, 169.5. And remember, I was expecting it to go all the way up to 250 and then start to sell off because remember, the 4-year cycle peaks in November of this year. That's when the cycle ends. And that means we've got all of November, all of December for the market to begin selling off if it does follow through its traditional pattern. So there you go. What's the best place to buy Bitcoin if you want to set up and start buying Bitcoin monthly? Great question, Dwight. So it boils down to two exchanges if you are in the US. It boils down to Coinbase or Kraken. The other exchanges, which is Binance.us and Gemini, have no liquidity. There's very little liquidity, not worth it. And the fees, well, they're actually okay. Coinbase charges you more, so I believe you can set up recurring payments over at Kraken. So if I had to recommend one, Dwight, I would say open a Kraken account, and then when you go to your settings, you can set up recurring payments. You know, I'm so fortunate that back in 2017, I set up recurring payments every Friday. So it was for like a year straight. Every Friday, I bought Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum, just because I had capital free to spend on it. And I was like, you know, I like the concepts of crypto and digital assets. So in hindsight, man, I was very, 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 very fortunate. Dakota says, what about Robinhood? You could do it on Robinhood. I don't use their interface, but sure. I don't know what the fee structures are at Robinhood. Is Robinhood bad to hold Bitcoin? No, not necessarily. I don't think Robinhood is any worse than a Coinbase, a Kraken, or any of the centralized exchanges. Remember, Dakota, your main concern, if you keep it on one of those exchanges, is those exchanges own your crypto. It is not yours. So if you got one whole Bitcoin at Robinhood or Gemini or Coinbase, you are not in control. You do not own your cryptocurrency. It is their crypto, which is why I always recommend, you know, you get cold storage and pull your stuff off of the exchanges. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, Big Ed says kind of expensive fees on Robinhood. I think, I don't know. I don't know. Robinhood is obviously trying to make a play. They were in the equity side of things, and then they go into options, and now they're going digital assets, and I think they're going all in on digital assets, which is one of the reasons we've seen their stock surge so much, and will probably continue. Tofi, that was one of my big concerns a while back, and I don't know because I don't use Robinhood at all, but I knew at the beginning, if you buy at Robinhood, you can't send it anywhere else. It had to stay there. Now, that may have changed, right? Tasty allows purchase and transfer to cold storage. So here's why I don't like to use companies like, TradeStation. I couldn't get that word out. Here's why I don't like to use platforms like TradeStation or Tasty Trade, is because they're not a crypto exchange. What happens is the orders come to them. They have a relationship with a broker dealer somewhere that facilitates the trade. I would go to a platform that actually is an exchange. That would be Coinbase. That would be Kraken, Binance, Gemini. Those are exchanges. Robinhood, I believe, bought a broker dealer on the back end. I'm not sure. I'll have to dig deeper into I'll have to look deeper into how Robinhood does all theirs. But look, the point is, find the place that's the cheapest for you to buy. Right now, the cheapest would be Kraken or Gemini. Gemini is very cheap. I saw someone here that says, what about Gemini? Gemini just has no volume. No volume. There's almost nothing going on. I can show you examples of that if you guys want on how to determine the volume and liquidity there. But yeah, if it was me, I would say I'm going to go and buy on Kraken. And then once you buy, I would just come up with the process of moving that cryptocurrency off of those exchanges. Because you may as well buy Bitcoin ETF if you're going to do it around. Yes. Yeah, and that's a good point. If you just plan on, holding it for a little while, ETFs are a fine way to go. I would certainly say with IBIT, which is, I think, 0.25% fee. But you don't pay transaction costs on the ETFs. I don't know about Bybit, Jitty. Don't know about Bybit. I've got a few I need to look at. Let me write that down because I'll do Bybit and Robinhood just so I can add them to my fray. But typically I'm looking at the major four, right? ETH is the future with all the stable coins on it. Yeah, but those stable coins, they're moving over to other networks that are cheaper. So I don't agree with that statement. I'm a big fan of Ethereum, but it's not the future. It is a future. And if you look at stablecoin utility, if you're going to be using a stablecoin on Ethereum, you're paying a lot for gas fees, especially if adoption starts to come around. If you look at something like Solana or Sui or Aptos, which could all have stablecoins as well on that ecosystem, things get much cheaper and much, much faster with regards to transactions and finality. So Ethereum is just this OG that has network effect, right? They've got everybody using it. It's not the answer. Same with Uphold. Uphold's UK, if I'm not mistaken, TD. And I don't use anything outside of US borders. I use anything out of US borders specifically because I just don't trust. I don't even trust these US companies, but at least I have some recourse if it's something done in the United States. All right. Yeah, you guys got all kinds of excited there. I tried a Bitcoin last night when price is 108 and went to buy and my price is 110. Where are you trading at, Dwight? That could very well happen. That's why you should use limit orders. On Kraken? Wow. Unfortunately, I don't have my Kraken account open here and I won't waste our time to do that one, but Kraken usually has good liquidity. Now, keep in mind that when you go to still look like the throwback OT. Who, me? This is not Trading Academy. This has nothing to do with Trading Academy. This is a completely different show, Wilson. Kraken, remember these things trade 24 hours. So if you go and look at, let me see if I can find Bitcoin on Kraken. I'll show you liquidity here. Let's go to BTC USD and we'll go to crypto and see if I can find the Kraken exchange. And there's Kraken's quoted price, right? So here's Kraken's Bitcoin transactions. So I'll add that. We'll bring up the chart, and I'm going to put volume at the bottom and change this to like a 5-minute time frame, just so you can see the liquidity crunch that happens. So this is probably what happened to you. Yeah, I can see it already, Dwight. If you look here, it depends on what time you place that order. So just because a market's open doesn't mean that there's liquidity. Look at the early active time here, where there's huge volume started right around noon, but Kraken doesn't have a tremendous amount of volume. And you can see right here, there was a big jump from 108 to 1. If you got slipped that much, my friend, I wonder what happened there, because that's a pretty significant slip. If you bought it or put an order at 108 and you got filled at 110, that's kind of dramatic slippage. I'd want to know a little bit more on what order type you put and how you put that in. But you can see that there's not a lot of volume going on here. Right? There's like not even a whole Bitcoin traded in a 5-minute window on Kraken back here at 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's a challenge that you're going to face on Kraken. Yeah, you should always use a limit order. You can use a limit order and give yourself a little slippage if you want, but that would prevent those big slips. So when you're using these platforms, especially with crypto or spot forex, I think you have to understand what happens on the back end. So if you go to KuCoin, right? I think it's a Singapore exchange. When you put an order in there, they see your orders and you're trading against that firm. When I trade at Coinbase, I'm trading against them. They can see my orders. But if they see an order that they can manipulate or use, like if you put a market order to buy something and it's thinly traded, generally they're taking the opposite side of the trade. So if you guys came to me, and let's say I'm the only seller out there, and you say, I want to buy, and I've got my quoted price is I'm selling at $1,000, right? I'm just making it up as an example. And you say, okay, I'll buy it at $1,000. I see your order come in for however much it is, and I go, you know what? I'm canceling my order, and now it's $1,250. So I can slip you on that price because I see your orders. I'm on the other side. So be very careful when you trade with these centralized entities. You really need to know your order type so that you don't get screwed with slippage. Sounds like you did, Dwight. It's unfortunate. Usually Kraken is a pretty above board in my opinion, but a $2,000 slip is pretty significant. That's a massive slip. That's true. Steve says if it goes to $1 million, $2,000 isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, I'm definitely a believer of don't worry about the price you paid today. In a decade, you're gonna look back and go, man, I should have bought more, no matter what the price was. If this trend continues of adoption, and certainly under the current administration, which is very, very positive. Mick says, Fidelity's the worst. Market orders filled at $1,000 more than current price. Look, that happens all the time. Here, let me give you guys a real quick example here. So this is something I teach in the crypto program, but I'll share it with you because it's pretty relevant. If you go over here to the basic Coinbase platform, and I just keep a little bit here for demonstrations in my classroom, but watch this. You guys can see right here on your screen, it says Bitcoin, 111,158, right? Right there in blue, I'm highlighting, oops, dab nabbit. I was highlighting it in blue, all right? That's what Bitcoin's, 111, 235. So if you go over here and say, I want to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, you go, okay, great, review the order. Notice it's saying 112,392. They've added $1,000 per Bitcoin onto that page, right? 1,000 they've added, and most people would never even see that happen because they're showing you over here the current price is 111,235, but you're buying it at 112,383. That is how these exchanges get you. And this is not Coinbase uniquely. This is every exchange will do this. They have an advanced platform and a basic platform. They all want you to use your basic platform because in their mind, you're too stupid to figure it out. Always use the advanced platform, folks. Always. Always use the advanced platform. Never use the basic platform because they're just going to nickel and dime you every single day. You get way more slippage than when you swap cryptos. Yeah, and with when you swap cryptos, if you're using DeFi marketplaces, it'll at least tell you what your slippage is going to be, right? And you can set a maximum threshold there. So anyway, we're going. We're going off the rails here. So let's real quickly go back to what happened out there today. So we got the Bitcoin all-time highs. That's great. You know, I'm a big believer that we're going to go significantly higher. I think someone in here asked me, where do I see it in 10 years? In 10 years, I think we are well over $1 million a coin because you're going to have global dilution of Bitcoin as an asset class. It will be much more utilized around the world as a store of value. There will always be a segment of the population that says, I trust implicitly my bank. 100% trust them. And then you're going to get people like me who say, I don't trust my bank at all. And I'd rather take possession of my money. I'd rather own my money, my capital. And remember, I'm in a society where I have access to any financial system I want to get into, right? There are some people that don't even have access to a bank. And those people will be utilizing Bitcoin as their own bank to be their self-custody. So I think once we get more and more adoption, you will see demand for Bitcoin and digital assets overall start to surge. Big Ed says, damn it, I say that now. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah. You know, Big Ed, if you could go back, honestly, people always say, if you could go back to the year 2010, what would you tell yourself? I'd be like, buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. Buy $100, buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. I'd be a multimillionaire today. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the news today. Obviously, today was a big day because we've been waiting for the July 9th for the whole tariff resolution, which didn't happen. We were, I guess, treated with a series of letters to presidents around the world saying, hey, look, here's your tariffs. They're going on August 1st until you fix something. If not, it's going to happen. Today, we got another one, which I thought was interesting, a new tariff, not really new, but this was on Brazil. Apparently, Brazil, Trump doesn't like a court case that's going on against the old president, so now he's not only playing president, he's playing the judicial system as well and saying he's innocent, it's a witch hunt. Yeah, I've heard that story before. Either way, I don't care about the witch hunt that's going on in Brazil. What I do care about is it's a 50% tax on Brazil imports. So, just because I like participation, tell me what the top imports from Brazil to the United States are, right? Because if they're putting a 50% tariff on imports into the U.S. from Brazil, I can already start to look across the spectrum of investment opportunities and say, okay, what's going to get impacted the most, right? Where do we start to see things get hit? And I thought that was rather interesting. Steve says beef. Okay, we get a bit. I'll show you a table here in just a second. We get... when it comes to beef, let me see the exact number here. Frozen bovine meat, $445 million. So not that much. Oliver says coffee. Coffee is $1.3 billion. Beans, Carnival, shoes. I don't think we get shoes there, but here's a table for you. I thought this was interesting because look at number one, crude petroleum. It's crazy. 5.38 billion. And this is as of 2023, folks. So these numbers are going to be off. It's the most recent thing I could find in a visual like this, going back to 2023. But petroleum products, you got refined petroleum, 1.9 billion. Crude oil is 5.38. Iron ore, 561 million. So these aren't really that big in numbers. Finished steel, 1.7 billion. If you look down here, coffee is the one that I was thinking of. Because right away, I'm like, I know we get a lot of coffee from Brazil. We also get fruit juice, right? The 922 million. Helicopters, planes, and spacecraft. I would never have guessed this. 1.59 billion. in planes, helicopters, or spacecraft. So obviously this is going to have an impact for us. Drive, I like your thinking. He says supermodels. Yeah, and MMA fighters, right? We get supermodels and MMA fighters with cauliflower ear. That's kind of what I was getting at, Big Ab, is you're like, 1.5 billion. But that's not that big of a deal. However, if I do play the domino theory here, which is, okay, if that coffee, that $1.33 billion worth of coffee imports into the United States is now going to cost us another 50% higher, who suffers here? And my immediate knee-jerk reaction was Starbucks, right? Starbucks or anybody who's a coffee seller, coffee roaster, who's buying their stuff. Let's go SBUX. This could be problematic for them going forward. And I was looking at it today as I saw the announcement. It's kind of interesting because Starbucks, as you guys can see, kind of has closed this gap. It closed the gap. It closed the gap from back on April 2nd when we had the initial tariff talk, and it shot all the way down. Now, I don't remember initially what the tariff talk was for Brazil, but certainly these tariffs would hurt Starbucks because there's no domestic production really of coffee in the U.S. Now, I'm kind of up in the air here. I don't know what you guys think. If you look at that, Starbucks jumped up to 97.50 today, and then it sold off. It was only up 0.33% of the day. But if those tariffs do in fact go into effect, which should happen August 1st, I would expect to see Starbucks start to take a little bit of a hit because that's going to impact their profit margins as they import a bunch of coffee from Brazil. And while it's not a large number, it certainly is for one business, right? So to me, I think this could be a potential play as a short opportunity on Starbucks. But ultimately, look, here's what I think will happen. I think you're going to see price pressure on Starbucks stock. I think you're going to see it drift lower, even though the trend is your friend till the bend at the end, and that trend says higher highs and higher lows. I would be watching for a break of these lows for a potential short opportunity, but long term, I think Starbucks will continue to go up because I do believe they will resolve this. I just don't know when, right? I just don't know when that's going to happen there for Starbucks, but that was a big piece. Here is the next competitors. This is as of 2023 as well. So Colombia was the number one importer of coffee in the United States at 1.379 billion, and then Brazil right behind that with 1.353 billion, and then Switzerland. If you told me that Switzerland was exporting coffee to the U.S., I would actually say false. I don't believe it. Strange. But Canada, like, how do we not have coffee in the U.S. and Canada has got coffee growing regions? It just seems strange to me. But Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, Nicaragua, Vietnam, Indonesia all round out that list of the top 10 or so. Lee says, people pay so much for their coffee. I imagine I won't mind paying even more money for that. As I said yesterday, John O'Donnell loved this phrase. It says, the cure for a high price is a higher price. There will come a moment. I have a very good friend who drinks Starbucks coffee all the time, and now they drink McDonald's coffee because it's significantly cheaper. I think many people, it's an addiction. B, it's almost a religion, right? You go to Starbucks, you got your routine. You say hi to Carl, who's making your iced mocha venti frappuccino with 2 pumps of pumpkin spice latte, all that stuff. You got your routines down, and I guess it kind of makes you feel human to have that day-to-day interaction. But at a certain point, you're like, man, I'm spending $10 a day for a coffee. That's $300 a month. I mean, that's a car payment. I might start to cut back or maybe even make some coffee at home. So I think we would see some changes here. Certainly, the cost will get passed on to the customers, and I think that could start to hurt Starbucks' bottom line because they're not making any more profit on the item. They're just passing on the quote-unquote tax or tariff tax to you. Noam says, I switched to McDonald's coffee now. Great. I didn't mean to bring business to McDonald's, but hey, our job is to try to figure out how those dominoes fall, right? So if we know that Starbucks is going to increase their price significantly and drive people maybe to lower price coffee, maybe McDonald's does see a boost in sales because people are moving over. Lee says, personally, I think McDonald's coffee is better than Starbucks. Man, it's so funny because you'd think Starbucks would be like this elite coffee roaster, right? Oh, it's Starbucks. McDonald's, you're like, what do they know? They can't even make a rib sandwich. They call it McRib, but there's no ribs in that thing. Ugh. Anyway, I'm done. Big Ups, I used to do Starbucks every morning for convenience on the way to work. Now it's Keurig. Yeah, totally. I do. I'm not even a big coffee drinker, but I got a Keurig espresso maker with the foamer thing on the side, and I do home coffee. I have one a day. You guys are lucky that it's now, after 2 p.m., so the caffeine is kind of whizzed through. But if you were on a call with me at 10 a.m. or so, if you're part of my crypto program that starts at 10, man, I am rocket. Arnie Van Acker says, most Starbucks coffee is from Asia. Okay. I don't know the statistical breakdown of the geographics of their coffee. I'll look into that one. But even if that's true, we now have tariffs on Vietnam. We have tariffs on Cambodia. We have tariffs on Thailand. So I looked here. If you're talking Asia, I have a hard time believing that is in fact true, that they get most of their Starbucks is from Asia, because they just don't import that much. Vietnam, these are the top importers of coffee annually into the United States. And if the only Asian country on here is Vietnam with 347 million, I don't even think that all that coffee that they send in could satisfy the market. Now you got Indonesia as well, but you're talking those two numbers combined are roughly $600 million worth. I think that they're definitely getting some from these higher suppliers up here, but who knows? Oh, DB says, ask a smoker what the price per pack is, their threshold. Isn't that funny how years ago, everywhere you went, people were smoking like actual cigarettes over and over and over and over again? And now I don't see cigarettes pretty much anywhere, at least not here in California. Maybe different in other states, but now everyone's on those damn vape pens, which I think are even worse. Let's go to, I'm going to keep shifting. I want to make sure I get through everything here today. Here is the man, the myth, the legend, Jerome Powell, right there. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm a big fan of Senator Lummis. I think that she is a pretty astute, very good with regards to crypto. And this is, how politics are. You can agree with someone on one front and completely disagree with them on another front. And here's what Senator Lummis, I'm curious what you guys think. I'm not going to show it to you because it shows my response on there. I don't want you to I don't want you to see my response yet. Senator Lummis says on a tweet today, Jay Powell has proven time and time again that he is unfit to run the Fed. He must resign now. Yes or no? Do you guys agree with that? That he's unfit to run the Fed time and time again. He's proven it. What do you guys think? See, to me, this is political grandstanding. And, we've had Bill Addis on the program. And while I certainly don't believe that he's done the perfect job, I think most of the audience here would go, if we didn't have the Fed intervene and do what they did, we would be in a much, much rougher spot, right? I think he's proven time and time again that he can actually do it, that he's good. Steve, that's when Lummis is unfit to comment. Yeah, I think, and I even wrote, my response to this was, unfit, that's a little harsh. If it wasn't for the Fed and their bailout of markets, you would be singing a different tune. He pulled us through a pandemic. Show me another Fed chair who did that. There isn't one, right? Have we had a pandemic, I'm sure we've had a pandemic since 1913, but I sure as heck don't remember them. So, this is the call that's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. There was rumor out today that Jerome Powell did resign. Like, what? And then nothing's come of it. He has said already, I'm not going to resign. I'm going to complete my term, as he should. But this is going to continue to cause a lot more pressure. President Trump certainly yelling and screaming. Yeah, Rob, he's got until next year. It's early next year. I think March or May is when his term's up. And I agree with you, Les. I think he gave us the impossible soft landing. I wouldn't believe it, but here we are, right? He's done it. And I think we're all better for it. Granted, we got a bunch more deficit, but it could have been a lot worse. So, Lisa says, so many people think they can do a job better than the person doing the job. She's not even saying that she can do the job, just that he's unfit. And he's proven time and time again. And I just say hogwash to that. I do not believe that he has proven time and time again that he's unfit. I actually think that he's done a pretty damn good job, even though I think the Fed should be abolished. I'm an abolitionist when it comes to the Fed. All right. As you can tell, it's getting very hot in here. I'm starting to sweat upstairs. So, as I always try to encourage you guys to do, Mick says, JP Design. Bill says he's done great. Are there things that he could have done slightly differently? Yes. But all in all, I think he did a damn good job. Okay, so I always encourage you guys to send in questions. You can send them in to the email you see on your screen there, which is tradermerlin@gmail.com. This one came in from Jacob. Jacob, thank you very much. He says, I'm having some trouble understanding Robinhood's tokenization as well as perpetual futures. Could you go in depth on these topics? All right, I don't know how in depth I'm going to go. Yeah, Rob, it is only 85 degrees out here. However, this room has no AC and it faces the sun all day long, and I'm in a long sleeve shirt. So, It's part of my sauna weight loss routine. So anyway, just kidding. So let's talk about Robinhood. Obviously, Robinhood's chart, fantastic, looking incredible over the past year or two. And I think a lot of this has to do with vision of Vlad, who is the CEO, and what they're trying to get into. The big announcement from last week was that they are going to create tokenized investments for the European Union. Conveniently, and I find this rather interesting, it's for the European Union, not for U.S. citizens. And my argument initially was, I love it. Tokenization means they create a token that resides on a blockchain. In this case, they're using a layer 2 solution. And that layer 2 solution will facilitate high-speed transactions of these crypto tokens. These tokens can represent anything. They could have it represent the price of Apple. They can have it represent a price of a barrel of oil, a bushel of wheat, whatever you want to peg that to. They can say this token equals that price and just quote the price directly. So how do they do that? I said initially that my challenge would be that if you're creating these tokens arbitrarily, which is what's happening in DeFi marketplaces are creating a token saying this trades at the same price as Apple. And my argument is that the exchange where Apple is traded at would sue, right, and shut it down because they lose revenue. The transaction's not there. Well, in digging into the details of it, I went through all their fine print and documentation, which was a lot of work. Robinhood says they have a third party. It's a special purpose vehicle, an SPV. And they say that SPV, of which I cannot find a name, that creates problems for me. I can't find the name of this company. This SPV, special purpose vehicle, what they do is if a customer buys one token, and that token represents one share of Apple, then this SPV will buy a share of Apple. So what Robinhood is claiming is every token that gets sold in Europe for a stock is actually buying physical shares on the US exchange, which, fine, right? Then I don't see any problem here. I don't see NASDAQ having any issue because the NASDAQ's going to look over there and say, hey, you wanted to buy a share of Apple? You had to buy it from our exchange, therefore we get the transaction volume and the liquidity, great. However, if you can't show me the entity that's actually supposed to be making the physical trades on the exchanges, you lose credibility to me. You should be able to point to a company and say, we're doing it through BlackRock, we're doing it through JP Morgan, we're doing it through our own company. They can't do that. They just call it an SPV, a specialty purpose vehicle. So tokenization is in its infancy. And Robinhood, I love what they're doing because they're starting to break on through this stigma of digital assets being bad and taboo and saying, look, let's tokenize things. We already have tokenized gold. We already have tokenized oil. You can go onto DeFi marketplaces and buy oil and gold and all these different ones. Why not do it for stocks? Why not do it for futures? Why can't I do tokenized options contracts and much, much more? So I think it's great because it's opening up the door to a whole new possibility of digital investments. And it moves faster on these DeFi marketplaces, potentially even Robinhood. So that's how they do the tokenization. If you buy a token of Apple on Robinhood's European exchange, there's supposed to be a company that's actually buying that share on the US exchanges. If you sell that token, then they sell those shares and get rid of the token. That's how it's supposed to be done. And with regards to perpetual futures, one thing that's unique about futures is there usually is a defined time frame, right? So you can go out and I'll just go here and go to corn. Oops. Actually, no, I want to look at cocoa. Did I type it in wrong? Cocoa futures. Okay, so I spelled it wrong, but let's go to cocoa futures. I can click on the exclamation point, which will be a continuous contract, or the current contract. So here is, let's just do the December contract. Here's the December cocoa contract for on the ICE exchange. So I know that this contract tells me what the expected price is going to be for this quantity of cocoa on just the third week of December, right? So that gives me that target. Now, this futures product, by definition, is a price in the future. However, perpetual futures, which is what I use here on the program every day, I'm really just rolled contracts, is they don't have an expiration. They just keep on trading. So you don't have to worry about, getting caught at expiration and taking delivery of the asset or cash settlement, whichever the settlement is. There is no expiration, so you can hold these as long as you want. If you look over here at Coinbase, you can see their, let's go to their advanced platform, and you go to derivatives. So here is their derivatives platform, and one of the main reasons I think people should look at leveraged assets or look at these perpetual futures is you can now short the equity markets. So right now, the only way you can really short Bitcoin is to use ETFs. You could go to the outright futures market. But here, if you're using their derivatives and using futures, I can now sell short. You can see it right up here on the right-hand side. It says sell short. And I can also get leverage. So depending on what it is I'm buying or selling, I can get up to 5-to-1 leverage. Right now in the US, Coinbase is the only crypto exchange that has these perpetual leveraged futures. Kraken recently bought NinjaTrader, so they are going to incorporate those futures products in. So I expect to see Kraken have significantly more products out there. But how does it work, Jacob? You treat it like a normal futures contract. You just don't have to worry about expiration. Now, what I don't like about them is there's obviously going to be some fee structures in there that are going to degrade the value of it. So I haven't done a test to see what this perpetual future looks like against Bitcoin over time, but my guess is it'll start to decay a little bit because of fees that are built into that, if that makes sense. Let's see. I got a whole bunch of questions coming through here. Merlin, abolish the Fed. Who would control money supply, rates, inflation control, etc.? It's a great question, Steve. So I'm kind of a believer of I'm a believer that the market will heal itself. That there will become a mechanism for the market to heal itself is by going through tougher times. Now, where I think the Fed is great at is if you take the market like a sine wave and they're looking at highs and lows, right? The job of the Fed is to really keep those ebbs and flows, those highs and lows, compressed and not wildly different, right? So if we start to have a massive economic slowdown, they juice it and try to keep that slowdown higher. If it's booming too much, they'll rein it in a little bit so it doesn't get, a bubble-esque type of environment. I'm a believer that you shouldn't have that type of manipulation, that you let the free market, the free economy go. And unfortunately, what would happen in those situations is those big peaks and valleys would get bigger. And I would be okay with that. I am not okay with the rampant printing of money and flat-out manipulation of markets. I mean, if you look at what's gone on with the housing market, I don't care who you are not going to convince me otherwise. The housing market has been absolutely manipulated to go up by the Fed, whether that's through low rates and having a cheap mortgage because they just kind of kept pushing rates down, or it's because of the printing of money over and over and over again. There's so much manipulation they can do to the housing market and buying mortgage-backed securities to prop up bad loans. That's manipulation. That shouldn't have been there. Now, I'm a hypocrite because... And I'm going to save you the time and effort because Steve's like, you're a hypocrite, Merlin. I am a hypocrite because I'm benefiting directly from the Fed propping up the housing market. I'm benefiting directly from their actions, but they shouldn't be doing it because there's I would say, an overwhelming part of the population that may not benefit from those Fed's actions. And overall, in the long term, it deteriorates the value of the dollar, which is, since the Fed inception in 1913, dollars lost 97% of its value. Why is that? It's because of the Fed. So that to me, as Steve says, if you wanted a true free market, it would work, but we are already past the point of no return. I agree with you. I don't believe that. I think that if we abolish the Fed, we would see chaotic swings, both from a boom and bust cycle. I think we'd see external forces like banks try to manipulate the markets more. They're a necessary evil, I would argue. I would like to see more oversight in what they do, but if we did not have the Fed in 2020, let's look at a price chart here, and we could all speculate as to where it would have gone. But if we did not have Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve backstop us here, this would have gone a lot lower. I think this could have gone massively lower than, we fell all the way down to a low point on the S&P 500 back in March of 2020 of 2,174. If the Fed didn't do what they did and flood us with money and give everybody $1,200 stimmy checks to go buy stuff and prop up the economy, this would have dropped. I mean, we could have seen ourselves at 1,500, maybe even lower. So, yeah, obviously I'd be hypocritical to say get rid of it, but I've enjoyed the benefits of the Fed, but I don't like the manipulation. I think the markets, if they're in pain, the market should find a way to heal themselves. It's almost like if you're a human and you have and you get sick, you just go to the pharmacy and you take all these pills, right? Well, that's one way to heal. The better way would be to look at your system and say, what do I need to do to fix this? Okay, I need to exercise more. I need to get more sleep. Or I need to drink more water, as opposed to, hey, give me 50 cc's of heroin or Klonopin or whatever it is to aid my deficiencies. I think that the markets work better that way. But we're never going to get there. They'll never abolish the Fed. There's too much money in it. Remember, the banks own the Fed, and the banks make all the money. So, yeah, Big Eb says we can't trust the banks. Remember, the Fed is owned by the banks. So, can't trust the Fed either by that rationale, right, Big Eb? Let's see. Interest rates still high, expensive to buy more real estate. If we look at that, let me see here real quick. All right, my hourglass is finished. If we look at the rates, since we did not go through the top 10 here today, let's go there. So here's your current 10-year yield, 10-year bond, right? Which is what is the basis for the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Today, big sell-off. Really, I don't see there being that much of a dramatic change in housing demand based off the 10-year. It's just been ebbing back and forth and not really that big of a deal. But if we saw this trend aggressively one way or the other, I do believe it would actually impact real estate significantly, whether it creates more of a boom or a bust. Right now, I think we're just kind of calm and not really headed in any specific direction. And a lot of politicians are screaming for this to come down too, but they don't control the long end of the yield curve. Pottery painting, huh, Lori? I hope you did something good. TD says, not the operational warp speed to speed up the vaccine. Oh, yeah, that's one of them. All right, that's one of them. Yeah, Lori, out drinking and painting today. Was there wine included? Yeah, I agree. Steve says, I'm not disagreeing with you. And you're more than welcome to disagree, Steve. You know that. But I do think we're addicted to the drugs of stimulus. We're addicted to the drug of buying mortgage-backed securities. We're addicted to the drug of the Fed buying treasuries and buying bonds to manipulate interest rates. And I think the average person doesn't understand how much wizardry is going on from the part of the Fed. I don't like it, but I guess as a trader, as an investor, as a real estate person, as long as we're paying attention to the trends and the probability of what the Fed may do going forward, then we can put whatever those odds are in our favor, even if some of those actions may hurt the population through inflationary practices or whatever. Right? We can make investments that would help us there. Okay, let's go back to El Mercato and run through our top 8 here. I don't think we're going to see Bitcoin get back up to 112 in the next few hours, so it's just kind of sitting there to 111 on the spot price. If we go from bottom to top, we've got that 10-year, but really the 10-year, I drew this kind of channel in a long time ago, and it feels like my lines are off. Let me fix this line right here. It should be to there. Feels like we're just compressing, so I really don't think much of the 10-year at this point as it just traverses sideways and gets tighter and tighter within that range between 4% and 4.6%. So all in all, I don't see anything dramatically happening there. That dollar index, though, we talked about how this one is looking great from a short perspective. Expected there to be a rally back up and then continue that downtrend. If that does happen, that means equity markets continuing to make all-time highs. I mean, that's as simple as you can make it, right? If that dollar keeps going lower, more products are going to get sold for the U.S. with weaker dollars. Great. That's good for the economy overall. That'll help GDP as well. Crude oil. All right, so crude oil had that wicked bounce last week. Hesitated today. Really nothing going on that front. I do still have some puts on USO, but those will all expire on Friday, so no big deal there. It does look to me like this is just going to slowly start to keep creeping higher, but you never know with crude oil, man. It's just so volatile. Our risk-on assets have done well, meaning the risk-off assets have done poorly. And you can see here that gold chart still just right in the middle of that yellow box. There's nothing to say here, right? There's no demand for it, at least not like there was back in early this year. So we'll just leave gold alone for now. So fourth place, S&P 500. You had a pretty good bounce off of the little yellow box I'd drawn on there a couple days ago, right? So we bounced off it yesterday. Nice little rally here today, and I think that there's just general optimism for the markets, which is great. That teetered through to the NASDAQ as well. So the NASDAQ, up 0.68%. You are right at all-time highs. Not quite breaking through all-time highs, but just right there. And if we look at the components, obviously today's a celebratory day for Big Eb on many fronts, right? Big Eb holds NVIDIA, and you also got Bitcoin, and some of you also have NVIDIA as well. I'm going to go bring up FinViz here and show you their screener because we do have a first in American history is all-time high NVIDIA. It closed below because it sold off a little bit there near the end, but it actually broke the $4 trillion mark today. Pretty remarkable. Larry was on Trader on the Power Trading Radio Show back in 2015, and which is a decade ago, and he was telling me all about Nvidia and how he thought it was gonna be phenomenal and just going to grow. I might have been 16. Either way, if you told me back then that Nvidia was going to be the most expensive company in the world, I would have laughed at you. I said, not a chance in hell, no way. I mean, I know it'll be a big company, but not that big. Pretty impressive, $3 trillion, and Microsoft's right on the heels there. I remember we were all talking about who's going to be the first $2 trillion company, and then it was $3 trillion. Now it's $4 trillion. Heck, at this rate, we'll have a $5 trillion one by the end of the year. All right, I'm not selling, not selling those Nvidia cover calls. Look, if it started to sell off and kind of made some new lows, then sure, I'd be selling cover calls against it, knowing that it's probably going to have a pullback at some point. But man, that chart looks really, really good. Here is the chart of Nvidia. For those who are asking, it's up 1.8% today. It's just stunning. I mean, the run since those April lows has just been incredible. From the dead low to our peak that we established today, Nvidia is up 89% in 63 days. I know, Margaret, your Robinhood's done better. I know. But Robinhood doesn't have as much of a big impact on the broad market indexes as Nvidia does. Or really, the only one that was down today was Tesla. I do have the 280 puts expiring Friday, so hey, I hope Tesla drops. I want it to drop more so I can sell more puts and maybe even buy some at these lower levels. I'm good. Elon Musk, making some mistakes with Grok. I don't know if you saw the pro-Nazi comment. I didn't see it, but I heard all about him. The pro-Nazi comments that came out on Grok on some just nature of the beast. You can't train your model to be perfect. So there was your Nvidia. Meta also doing great, but Microsoft, I mean, it looks pretty much the same chart as Nvidia. They almost look identical with performance. All right, back to our top here as I roll out and keep my show rolling. The NASDAQ was your third place, up 0.68. You had the Russell 2000, which is starting to look better and better, right? They say that this one leads the market. Well, it's been lagging, and all of a sudden starting to catch up. 1.04% for the Russell, although we are coming into those levels. So a lot of levels from back in late last year and early this year, which may act as some overhead supply. And number one, of course, was your Bitcoin. Right now, the Bitcoin futures are still at 112,000 and change, but the spot price is only at 111, so a little bit different there. Okay, let's see. What did you guys have? He says, making video game chips. Who would have think that was the most valued company? So when Larry brought it up to me, and I wish I could get the archives, but when all this stuff happened, they took all the Power Trading Radio episodes down, which is foolish. Larry's argument was, yeah, Nvidia does video and gaming chips, but that's not where he saw the upside growth. Where he saw it was driverless cars. And he was like, NVIDIA is going to be the backbone running all these driverless car systems. And I was like, okay, great. And at that same time, so it must have been 2017, because I was deep into crypto at that point. It had to be 2017. And I said, you're also using these video processors for mining Bitcoin. And that at the time, that's what people were using, was these video, these NVIDIA chips to mine Bitcoin. I wish I would have done it back then, but I did not. And I told him, I go, that's a boom bust cycle. As soon as the crypto market implodes a little bit, Nvidia is going to get hurt. And he's like, yeah. But man, it's really one of those things that just vaulted their graphics chips into the stratosphere with regards to demand. Yep. And like everything Big Eb says, Larry's been proven correct more than once. Yeah, and he's been proven wrong more than once too, right? And I think that's to me the essence of being a trader. I'm wrong all the time, and I don't mind calling myself out if I'm wrong. I'll correct course and hopefully capitalize and Was I wrong on my circle? Oh yeah, the circle. I still can't believe that it's stuck up here at around $200. Now I have the 120 puts expiring on July 18th, but it's a little over a week away. Those aren't gonna end up in the money. I'll chalk that up. I'm done. I'm not gonna throw any more at circle. To me, this is irrationally high. I do think it's gonna go down, but I'll be right. I will be right, Big Eb, at some point, but I probably won't have any skin in the game because this has already bit me for $6,000. I'll leave that one alone. No, I'm done. I'd rather go back to MicroStrategy, which has been, a breadwinner for me. I actually have the 412.50s. So I sold the calls against my position. I've got a bunch of MicroStrategy. I've shown you my entry prices here over the past few weeks. If it closes Friday above 412.50, take my shares away from me. I will be very happy with that. Ideally, it closes at 412.49, right below the level, and I'll sell calls at a higher price next week because I do think Bitcoin is going up, right? My IBIT got taken away from me last Friday. I've been selling puts on IBIT as well. So, it's just been great. As a premium seller going aggressive on volatile stuff, it's been working very, very well. Circle added the do not trade list. No, it's not. It's a good. I like that, Lisa. It's not on my do not trade list. It's just one of those ones that, it's fine. I don't think of it as a trading vehicle per se. I was more of a speculative trade as way overvalued, and I thought it was going to come crashing down, and unfortunately, it just did not. Let's see. Rob says, absolutely go with the flow to the bend. Don't give it back. Yeah, and you're going to give stuff back, right? There's no way that any of you, including myself, are going to have all smooth sailing and every trade's a winner. It's not possible, right? For example, I've got UNG. So I have UNG, and I told you I sold, I have the $15 strikes that expired today. So right now I got exercised. Let me go coordinates. I'll put 15 on there. Wow, that was a great placement. I also sold today the 1350s, but I did, the $15 strike I have on this was not a big position. The 1350s was a much bigger position. So what will happen is I'm going to get these shares. They will be in my account as of tomorrow morning. I will see what the premium is if I could sell those $15 calls. Look, the fluctuations in natural gas, they're always there. And at a certain point in time, natural gas will be above 15 bucks. Absolutely be above 15 bucks. At some point, I don't know, could it go down to 12? Could it go down to 10? Could it go down to lower? Yeah. But if you look at this chart historically on UNG, and I'll bring up let's do a monthly, right? I don't see it getting that much lower than where we are at. I certainly don't think it's going to get below 12 bucks. So I'll continue to sell calls, lower my cost basis against my position at $15, and at some point that trade, even though I'm underwater for a little while and it was an incorrect call at the time from a timing perspective, at a certain point I will be positive on that trade because of the premium I collected. Still bearish on the natural gas. Look, the trend does not look that great. Let's go to the daily time frame here, especially over the past few weeks. And we broke down below it. I was playing that $15 as a backstop, but I'm okay. I'm okay holding natural gas. I'm not in a leveraged position, so if I was in Boyle, I'd be a little more concerned. Winter is coming, so maybe a buy soon, maybe. But again, it's such a small position. I'm not that concerned about UNG. I've got a way bigger value position in Tesla and MicroStrategy, even Webull. I sold a bunch of puts on Webull. We'll see if that happens. I got the $12 strikes expiring on Friday as well on that one, but that one is more speculative, if anything. Because I took his comments on NetTest to Trade Desk, Fortinet to the bank. Nice, good. And anyway, if you ever, whether it's my talk track or Larry's or any other guest, you just got to make sure that those are not investment recommendations. That's just what he's doing. That's what I'm doing. Up to you guys on how you want to trade those. All right, that's going to do it for me. I don't have anything on the earnings calendar for tomorrow. On the economic calendar, there is a little bit, and that's just really your unemployment claims. You can see it right there, 8:30 in the morning, 1 hour before the market's open. You have the unemployment claims. You have some central bankers will be speaking tomorrow afternoon, but that's pretty much it. Actually, there is some earnings. If I remember correctly, it was Constellation Brands was one of them. And who else reports tomorrow? It's such a quiet week. Next week is really the mother lode for earnings, but Delta Airlines, ConAgra Brands are the two big names. And WD-40 if you really want to be trading that one. So that will do it for me, everybody. I'm going to sneak out of here right under the wire. It's been a 59-minute show. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you have comments, questions, things you want me to discuss on tomorrow's show, tradermerlin@gmail.com is where you send them or put them down below in a YouTube video. Best of luck. I'll see you tomorrow.